This make.com automation turns this spreadsheet of blog post ideas into a blog feed fully automated, including image generation and detailed blog posts. It also formats the blog post to use bullet points or tables if you like. It also includes expert quotes. It also links to external sources. And most importantly, it beats all the AI detectors. Welcome to Automation Coach. If you enjoy this tutorial, please join my school community. The link is below. And if you head to Classroom, you'll find this tutorial where you can get the blueprint for make.com, which you can just import, and you'll get all of this that you just need to adjust. In this video, I'm going to go through it step by step, but a quick shortcut is to get the blueprint that you can import. Right, let's get started. Step one is the Google Sheet, and this is where you will create your list of blog post ideas. And you could connect this up to another automation that automatically creates the ideas. But here we're just going to do it manually. So first you need to create the Google Sheet, and you can see here the titles at the top. And again, in my school community, when you find the tutorial, I'll provide a link to where you can get this Google Sheet template as well. Roughly, here it is. So we have a title of the article. For example, Salesforce says 75% of small to medium businesses are experimenting with AI. Are sales jobs safe? The word count, how long we wanted it. Primary keywords, for example, sales executives. Secondary keywords, so this is great for SEO. External links, if we want to add credibility to our blog posts. Additional instructions, if we want the blog post to focus on anything in particular, or you can just leave that blank. You could use an automation to extract details from this external link, for example, pull out key stats, and those are the things that you want to talk about. Some stuff for Twitter, because the automation is going to automatically create a tweet for you as well. And then here it will save where the article is. And this automation will eventually publish it on WordPress, but you could change this to any blogging platform that you use. And what's nice about this automation is that we actually save it as Google Docs, which you could then save on file and use anywhere and everywhere that you want, not just on Google. So the first part of this process is to look up your Google Sheet. And by default, make.com will get the last row in the Google Sheet if you sort it by descending. So it opens up this Google Sheet and it will get the last one that's here. Then we're going to set some variables, such as the title, which was in column A, the title of the article, the word count that we wanted, the primary keywords, the secondary keywords, and note that we're using an if and split functions here for multiple keywords. So if we have multiple keywords, HR, comma, sales, comma, AI, comma, ChatGPT, this will split it up for us if there are multiple. Likewise for internal links, likewise for external links. Internal links, by the way, refer to if that we wanted to link to other places within our own website. External links and any additional instructions, which can be really powerful. And then a Twitter handle, and that might be, for example, your own, or it's going to appear within the tweet message. So the idea of this is that you could tweet perhaps the publication that you're mentioning or someone that you're mentioning, and it's a good just quick growth hack for Twitter. Again, all of these steps here, I'm not going to focus too much time explaining these kind of functions because you can just import this whole blueprint, which has all these things filled in for you from my school community. But hopefully if you pause this video, you can stop and see what I've written there and copy and paste it as well. Next, it connects to OpenAI to create a completion. I'm using ChatGPT 4.0. And the first thing I'm going to do is just set a very basic system message. You're a helpful, intelligent writing assistant. Then I'm going to give an example of what I want. So then the user prompt is use the following JSON brief, and I'll come back to that, to write an engaging, comprehensive outline in Markdown format. I'll come back to that again as well. Tone of voice, 50% Spartan casual. For lots of this automation, we're going to be using JSON to structure the replies that we get from ChatGPT because then it's easier to extract and use elsewhere. And we're also going to use Markdown format because the way that ChatGPT replies sometimes isn't very easy to extract to use on blog platforms such as WordPress. So in this automation, what we do is we get it to reply in Markdown format. And then later on, we're going to convert that to HTML. So that's the first user message I give, which is the instruction. And then immediately afterwards, I give another user message, which is an example of what ChatGPT is going to receive. And you can see here it's structured in JSON. We're going to give it a title, a word count, primary keywords, secondary keywords, internal links, external links, additional instructions, and the Twitter handle. And again, you can get this all from the blueprint if you just import it. Then we're getting an example of what we want the assistant to reply. And this is using Markdown format. So for example, here is the title and how I want this outline document to appear. Then it will give an instruction with H2 tags. And within each point, it's explaining what it should do in each section. So here's another section with how Markdown suggests sort of H2 tags. And this is what it should do in this section. And you can see here, it will link to the external link and so on. So this step with the ChatGPT or OpenAI is really important because what it's doing is it's not creating the article yet. It's creating the outline. And I've renamed these things to hopefully make more sense when you import the blueprint. So this step here is creating an outline, and I'm going to show you that. So when it creates the outline, it will save it in Google Drive, and this is what it will look like. So it's almost like a brief, an article brief. So the first AI agent is creating the brief. It's not the full article yet. And this is where it becomes really powerful because then the next AI agent will use this brief to create the article. And it becomes a lot better than if you just single prompt do the article, which gets flagged as AI much more often. So we're creating the outline here in Markdown, and then we're converting the Markdown into HTML, and then we're creating a Google Drive folder. So this module, we get the Google Drive module, create a folder, and I've just saved this under website, blog posts. So I was just showing you here, if we go back. So under blog posts, every single article will create a folder. And within that folder, we'll have the outline document and the article document. So right now we're just creating the folder and I use the title of the article as the folder's name. And I get that variable from set variables back here. And this in turn got the title from our spreadsheet. Once the folder is created, we can then save this outline result as a Google Doc within the folder. So for the name, and this is following Nick Sara's template, thank you very much. He uses O to infer outline and then the title. And then we bring in the HTML content, which is the conversion here. So this HTML content will come here. And the reason we use HTML is that that's what Google Docs likes. And it also works on WordPress. The reason we don't get ChatGPT to immediately write it in HTML is that it's found that it often makes mistakes. And it's better at just doing Markdown responses, which you then convert into HTML afterwards. So then you save that within the location of your Google Drive folder. And here you can see I have mapped it manually. And the way you do that is on Google Drive, if you just open up the folder and in your URL bar, if you copy that, the ID to the folder is this last bit here. Okay, so where it ends in 9, if we come back here, you can see that matches this. If it's a nested folder, one within the other, you'll need to put in both IDs. So you'll need to put in the ID of the parent folder and then the child folder. And then we're doing the folder ID, which is of the Google Drive folder you just created here. So that's the folder we just created for our article. And when you run that, it will give you an ID here, folder ID. And when you're creating the Google Doc, we're using that ID to show where it should be saved. Next, we're setting a variable called input brief, and we're saving the result of the outline of the ChatGPT module back here. That'll make sense in a bit. Hopefully you're sticking with me so far because we're just getting to the most exciting part, which is this area here wrapped in this gray. And again, this is probably the most complicated part of the whole scenario, but also what makes it work magically, especially for making it seem really good quality, professional written and beating all the AI detection tools. This is the most important part. And I really do recommend, again, that you get the import of the blueprint from my school community. So head to the link below, get the school community, because it will make this much easier. And it starts with an iterator module, which is going to iterate through each part of the brief. So if I open up the outline and you try to imagine, we want to run through this one step at a time. So I want you to do this section. Now I want you to do this section. Now I want you to do this section, and so on. And that's what this is doing. So this is taking the response from ChatGPT, that outline, and it's splitting it up into each section. So every time there's a new line, it's dividing it up. And then it's got a filter here, which is that if the section starts with ##, which means, let's say, H2 tag or a new section title, again, like this, then that's where we're going to split it up from. And what we're going to do is we're going to add a little arrow to it. So we're going to look for a section, and then we're going to put an arrow on it. And the reason we're going to do that, and it's really cool how this works, is then in the next ChatGPT module, which we're going to get it to run on each section. Look at this. The following is an outline for an award-winning article. Your task is to write one section and one section only. The one marked by an arrow. Tone of voice 50%, Spartan, casual, and then we give it the section. So let's take a look at how that works in reality. So the input that it gets first is the system message, you're a helpful, intelligent writing assistant. Then the user message is what we just read with this arrow, and it receives the outline of the whole document so that it has context of what the whole document's about. That's the really cool part. And then what it's doing is it's looking for, well, where's the arrow? And you can see in this example that the arrow's up here. So it's saying, I only want you to work on this section. But this is the really cool thing, because you haven't just given that section in isolation, you've given it within the context of the whole outline. And that way you don't get this duplicate content, you don't get these weird sort of conclusions or introductions. It understands that its role is just to do that part. So because this is so important, I'm going to go back here and start again. So we have the outline brief, and that's saved. That's the whole outline brief. We're now splitting the outline brief up by section or by new line. And sorry, we're splitting it up by new line. If one of the splits has ##, i.e. is one of these titles, then it continues with the iteration and it replaces with an arrow. So it gets that section and puts an arrow on it. Then ChatGPT is given the whole outline brief again, but one of the sections now has an arrow. So it gets the whole outline brief from here, but one of the sections now has an arrow. And ChatGPT will only work on the one with the arrow. So if we go to the input again, we're looking for the one with the arrow. And now it should be the second or third one. Here it is, the third one. So it'll only work on this part here. So ChatGPT then in its output only gives you this section. But the really cool thing is that it's taken into account the context of the whole outline. Next, we save that section that it's just produced as a variable. And now we do something really cool, and this is where some magic happens. We don't just want a boring article just full of paragraphs of texts. If we go to this example here, you'll see there are some paragraphs with bold. We'll see that's divided up. We'll see that there's a quote, automation coach, an AI teacher remarked, an expert quote. So that could be from you, it could be from your boss. If you're in PR, it could be from a client. You can see here there's a link to an external report. And if you scroll down, you'll see in some areas there are bullet points, which is really cool. And we could do tables or something else instead. And by breaking up the format, it looks a lot more natural. AI articles tend to just have a tendency to just be just this over and over again, or following the exact same format every time. What this does here is it randomly changes the format so that it's nice and different every time. And I'm going to show you how. So we just created a variable for that section. What it now does is it decides, should I change that section? Sorry, it goes down here first. Should I change that section to put a quote? So for example, here it says automation coach and AI teacher said this. So it's saying, should I put a quote in it? And the way we decide is with a random number. And we're going to give it a 25% chance that it's going to happen. In make.com, you can use the floor function in order to round a number. And then nested within that, we've got the random function, which will choose a number between 0 and 1. So let's say 0.25, 0.3, 0.8, 0.9. You're multiplying that by 4, and then you're adding ones just to make sure the number's never 0. And then what you can do is you can pick a number between 1 and 4, really. And if it is equal to 3, because it will round it down. So for example, let's say it's 0.25 times 4, well, that's 1. 1 plus 1 is 2. Is it equal to 3? No. But let's say it was equal to 3, then it will go ahead and do this next thing. So if that's complicated, don't worry about it. Again, just import this blueprint, and it's got all of this built in for you. What you just need to remember is that 25% of the time, so there's a 1 in 4 chance, then it will do this, and it will open up this OpenAI prompt, and we start with a system message, which is the same as always. You're a helpful, intelligent writing assistant. We're then giving a user prompt, which is to edit the following text, because we already have the section text from back here, so we're actually editing it, to include a quote from Automation Coach and AI Teacher. So you're going to want to customize this for yourself. And I'm again saying use Markdown format. So we're going back to Markdown format here, and it comes back with the reply. So sorry, we have this user instruction. Then I'm giving a user example. So this is an example that I'm giving it of the original text. And then underneath, I'm giving an example reply. So this is the example text. This is the example reply that I want. And you'll see I've changed it. Automation Coach, an AI expert who teaches online tutorials, said, and I've turned it into a quote. So rather than just boring article text, the first paragraph is now turned into a quote, which is much more natural. You could link it to your Twitter, you could link it to your LinkedIn. This is great for stuff like press releases, shows expertise. And then underneath that, I give the user with the variable coming from this ChatGPT answer here. So this ChatGPT one creates the result of the section that it's working on. It comes down here. If it matches a random number 25% of the time, then it will edit that section to include a quote. And we don't want it to do it every time, because we don't want every paragraph in our blog post to be a quote. That would just be a bit weird. So you can see here it says first. After it's tried that route, whether successful or not, it will then try this route up here, second. I should probably have done first at the top, but there you go. 25% of the time, it will also try and do this, which is to format the article in interesting ways, bullet points, tables, anything else you want, really. So for example, system, you're a helpful, intelligent writing assistant. I'm doing the user prompt, edit the following text to break up the flow, add bullet points, tables, and subheadings where needed for a variety. Use Markdown format again. Then again, I give it the user example. So that's what I want it to edit. And then I give the example of how I would like it to edit it too. And in this case, I've broken it up with some headings, put a bullet point list there, more bullet point list there. And we could probably work on this a bit more to include, for example, a table or other ways of breaking up content. So 25% of the time it will come here and do that. And then it's setting it as a variable. Now, some things to bear in mind are that doesn't necessarily mean that every 1 in 4 times it's going to happen. Just like when you roll a dice, there could be a time where it never happens, because that's what happens when you roll a die. It could be that it comes down here and it does the quote 25%, and then it comes up here and actually overrides that with bullet points instead. So you might want to play with that. If it says, nope, it's not coming down here, nope, it's not coming up there, then it will just continue with the original text. So 25% of the time, it will give a quote. 25% of the time, it will format the bullets. And in theory, therefore, 50% of the time, it'll do nothing and just carry on as is. And this is really the nice secret part of creating lovely, varied articles. Once it's done every single section, it will then get all of that and aggregate it here. So we get the variable section text, and then we aggregate it. So we put all the sections together, and then we're going to convert it to HTML. The following steps are referring specifically to WordPress. If you do not have WordPress, you can change these with modules for your own blogging platform, or perhaps just get rid of them and only use the Google article, because in this scenario, you're also going to get the full article within Google Docs here. And you could just use that. You could just copy and paste it. Maybe with your company, you want to collaborate, comment, share it with colleagues. And I know this looks like, ooh, that looks not very nicely formatted. You can just increase the spacing here. Or maybe even let's put a line between them, right? So that's easily done. But here we're going to talk about WordPress specifically, and there are some steps which I've done specifically for WordPress. For example, after it's converted it to HTML, I then have this text parser, which is removing the title from the article. And that's because when we come to create the WordPress post, WordPress asks for the title separately as a separate variable. You see here it says title, and then the content of the article underneath. At the moment, the title is saved all together with the other content. So we want to remove the title here. And we do that by identifying the h1 tag, which is created when it changes the markdown to HTML. So if I have a look at here, this is what went in. And you can see the hash for h1, double hash for h2. And then if we look at the output, because it's converted it into HTML, you can see the single hash is turned into h1, the double hash is turned into h2. So this text parser uses a regex string, which takes out the h1 tag. And again, either pause this video now to copy and paste that, or head to my school community, get the import, and you can have this all set up and done for you. Now what we're going to do is on WordPress, we're also going to find what categories exist because I want to categorize the blog post. So you get the WordPress module, connect to your WordPress, and this module is called Search Categories. And you don't actually have to do anything. There are no mandatory fields here, so you just leave them all blank. And if you leave blank, then WordPress will return all the categories that you've got on your WordPress site. And not only that, so here's the name of the category, it also gives you a category ID, which is what you're going to have to do as well. And we want to then combine all of those categories into a single string, because the way make and this WordPress bundle works, this WordPress module works, is it provides each category as a separate bundle. And without going into it, we want to combine those bundles together, and we do that with a text aggregator. So for our source module, we choose list categories, which is this one here. Search categories, it might be listed for you. Open up advanced settings at the bottom, change row separator to other, and for separator, put a comma with a space. So it's comma, space. And within the text, what you're going to do is you're going to put the name, and that's the variable given to you from WordPress search name, semicolon space, category ID. And the reason we do semicolon space will become clear in a bit. So that saves all the categories and the category IDs as a single string variable. Now what we're going to use is OpenAI again to kindly write us an excerpt of the blog post. And just to point out that by this stage, we've actually got the whole article done. This step over here has given us the whole article. So we've got the title, we've got all the sections, it's all done as HTML. So the whole article is done now. You can see here, these are the bullet points. What we're doing now are kind of the other steps of excerpts, images, titles, categories. So that's there saved. And we're just waiting a little bit before sort of publishing the article. And we're doing other bits first. So this step, this OpenAI step, this is creating an excerpt, a tweet, and a category, and even an image prompt. This system message is a bit different. I'm using 4.0 again, it seems absolutely fine. You are a helpful assistant that writes excerpts, tweets, image prompts, and selects a category. Reply in JSON. Then I give another system message, then user message. And this is divided up into the tasks. The first task is to create an excerpt for the article with a maximum of 50 words. Start with a common problem faced by sales, marketing, or HR. You might want to change that. That's my target audience, and address how the article solves the pain point. So just to show you, if we go back to my blog, this is the excerpt here. And you can see here is a good example of where it's addressing the target audience, sales professionals. It's addressing a pain point they often struggle with mundane tasks like data entry and lead tracking. How can AI help? So it's the target audience, the pain, the solution that the article is going to deliver. Next, I would like it to craft a tweet and to show you examples of what we're working towards. It will eventually create us a tweet like this. Worried about AI taking over sales jobs? Fear not. Our latest article shows da 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 da. So that's what we're working towards. Craft a tweet from Automation Coach. Write a concise and engaging tweet to promote it. The tweet should use one relevant emoji at the start, mention a common problem or question people have related to the topic, briefly describe what the article offers as a solution or why it's worth reading, tag any relevant accounts or brands when applicable, and be casual, concise, and enticing. Now this last part here, or second to last part, tag any relevant accounts, brands when applicable, I'll come back to. That's quite an important point. In number 3, we want to get an image prompt because we're going to create pictures. Create an image prompt to generate an image for the blog post in the style of photorealism, portrait style, aspect ratio 16:9, which means landscape, with yellow accent in the background focusing on one person. You're probably going to want to change that. That's my style. So I like to go for photorealistic images. That's debatable there. Portrait style, meaning person in the foreground, slightly blurry background. Aspect ratio 16:9. That's just the way that my blog works. Better to have landscape format. With yellow accent in the background, that's because my blog formatting is with this yellow color. So I like to have this sort of yellow tone. You can see it's given this yellow wall in the background, this yellow lighting here. Just helps with consistency and branding. And I like to focus on one person because sometimes it will create an image with loads of people in the foreground. I like to just focus on the portrait of one person, which I find a bit clearer, but depending on you and your branding, you might do differently. And in number 4, select the most relevant category from the list, returning the matching ID. So let's get into it. And we're asking again to reply in JSON. So I then give a user example formatted in JSON with the variables that will be given to it from the spreadsheet. For example, the Twitter handle that I might want it to mention in its tweet. I then give it an example article, which is the whole article that it's now created. And then this is the cool thing from the WordPress category. So when we searched WordPress for categories, do you remember I said the reason why we do semicolon will become clear in a minute, is because this is the name of the category, ChatGPT. Then there's a comma separator, and then we've got the ID. So ChatGPT is the name of a category on my WordPress site, and the ID of that category is 27. And I'm using semicolon to separate it from the next category, which is HR, with the ID of 26. This is just an example. Those numbers don't even have to be accurate. It's just to show it. And the reason I do it this way, searching for the categories, is that you are in control then from your WordPress site of the categories. You're not having to change in here manually the categories and the ID numbers every time. If you change it on WordPress, every time you run this, it'll automatically update to whatever you have on WordPress. So now that you've given that example, I then give the example of how I'd like it to reply. So I'd like it to give me an excerpt. I'd like it to give me a tweet. Sorry, I've been talking too long now. So this is an example of a tweet I'd like it to give me. And actually, I've just spotted an error because in my example, I give it the Twitter handle AI News Daily. And actually, in my example, I give it should probably tag that example. Moving on to the image prompt. So I give it an example of the image prompt to create. We talked a bit about that. Again, if you get the blueprint import, this will all be in there and you can just do it yourself. And then I give an example of the category ID it should have chosen for this article. So this article is all about sales, marketing, and HR. So I'm saying category ID 26, which back up here, HR 26, done. And then underneath this example, which has got the assistant role, we're then giving it the real data. So user, Twitter handle, and that comes back to this stuff all the way back here, all the way back here. So when you set this, title, word count, primary keyword, internal links, external links, you've got your Twitter handle there. The article, so that's coming from this bit here before it's turned into HTML. So this end of the iteration here, so still with markdown format. The category ID, which will be pulled from WordPress, so this text aggregated result. And then I'm just reminding it to please give me all of it. Give me the excerpt, the tweet, the image prompt, the category. And this is something I haven't actually set up, but I've put here temporarily. So depending on how this video goes, you might find some other variables to give up to 3 tags as a comma separated string. I might just remove that for now. But you could do this however you want. You could get some tags as well, basically. Response format JSON, pass the result, yes. And guys, if you can't see these options, make sure you've got show advanced settings as on, and you may need to increase your max completion tokens. Then we press OK. And let's have a look at an example of this. So once it's got the message, so here's the whole article that it's been given, we can then look at the result. So it gives it to you in separate JSON fields or keys. We've got the excerpt, we've got the tweet, we've got an image prompt, we've got the category ID it's chosen, and you can see here the tags that it chose, which I removed so it won't happen again. So create article. This is now a Google Doc module. And guys, just to say, if you're new to make.com and you're connecting up Google Docs for the first time, if you've got an @gmail.com email address, there are some extra steps you need to go through in order to connect up things like Google Docs, Google Drive, Gmail. And I have a tutorial video on School on how to do that if you get into trouble. Otherwise, just Google it. You're not alone. Other people have that problem. It just requires a few more steps. If you're using a business Google account, which is like at yourdomain.com, it's really easy to connect. So once you've created the Google Docs, you want to give the Google Doc a name. So A for article and then the title. Then for the content of the Google Doc, you've got the HTML result, because Google Doc uses HTML. So you can just convert the HTML to the Google Doc, and we get the HTML from this module here. Then underneath that, if I show you, oops, I'm always doing that. If we go into an article, we'll see you have the article at the top. And then what I've done at the bottom is I've got separate sections for the excerpt and then the tweet. So that's what this is referring to here. So I've done H2 excerpt, H2 tweet, and from the ChatGPT result, where it's broken it down to excerpt, tweet, image prompt, we can then call those individual parts into here, and then we're choosing where to save it. So that now creates the article in Google Docs, so that's saved there. The next part is we're going to create an image. You might want to move this before the Google Doc so that you can have the image in the Google Doc. Just so happens that I've got it afterwards, but it doesn't matter. Here we've got the OpenAI, and we're creating the image using OpenAI with their DALL 3 model. Now you could change this to other AI image generation tools. I'm just using OpenAI's for simplicity really, and so you don't have to join another service. But there's a lot of debate out there about which ones are the best, and whether you think these images are good or not is entirely subjective, and you may want to use a different service that perhaps is more realistic or more creative or more something. But I'm using ChatGPT or OpenAI, sorry. So you get the OpenAI generate an image module. You choose the model. DALL 3 is the latest one at the time of recording this video. You give it the image prompt that we created from OpenAI here. Select the size. So this is landscape format. The quality you can set standard or HD. The style, I just leave this as vivid. If you go onto YouTube, there are some comparisons of vivid versus natural. It's quite subjective again. I wouldn't say one is better than the other. It's just what style that you like, and vivid is fine for me. And you must make sure that the response format is image file, not URL. So if you're using WordPress, you want image file, which returns it in sort of binary. So after that, we then want to upload that image to WordPress. So you need to add the WordPress module, which says create media item. And in here, you want to not select this file option here, which is set by default. Do not click that. You want to press map, and then you want to map the data which is given to you from OpenAI. So from the image generation tool, that's the result. And then this is a really important step because it's a bit of a bug if you don't do it. And it's that you want to give each image a unique name. And so I'm doing that by the article title, and you want to put .png or .jpeg afterwards. So that will be the file name. If you do not do that and you leave that blank, the file name by default will always be output1.png. And every time you create an image for a new article, it will always save as output1.png, which will replace the image that you have on your WordPress. And so you'll get the same image every single time for every single article, unless you cancel it and put a unique name. So you must make sure you do that. It took me a while to figure that out. And then the title of the image and alternative text. I've just used the image prompt there, and there we go. So that will upload it to WordPress. And this is what it looks like once it's uploaded. So you can see here for the file name, it's done the name of the article .png. Cool. Once the image is created, we've got everything we need to create a blog post. Hurrah! So now we're coming into WordPress, create a post. I've got the title. Well, that's just the one from the spreadsheet right at the beginning. So I created the title. Then we've got the content. And the content, well, where's that coming from? That's coming from this one here, where we removed the H1 tag so that it doesn't do the title twice. The type is posts, like blog post. Then we've got the excerpt, which we created here. You could give a date if you want to, and there's various ways you can do that. For example, in the function, you could set a date here. I'm leaving slug blank because I'm using the WordPress default system. So for example, if you have pretty URLs, that'll come through by automatic. And here's a really important one, is how you want the blog post to be handled. Do you want it to be published straight away or saved as a draft for review? That's up to you. Each theme might have different formats. My one's just standard. The category of the blog post, well, we got OpenAI to decide that for us. And this one, if you don't have map on, you have to manually select where you want it to go. And you can't change that each time. So you could have this process running automatically and just tick one of these and it'll always go into HR, for example. But if you want it to change depending on the topic of the blog post, then you have to do this whole map function. And the categories here is the category ID, which is a number. It's not the word. Okay, so don't just put the word because that won't work. It has to be the number. And that number comes from this process that we did here where we searched all the categories on WordPress. And then we used OpenAI to decide which one was the best one and to give us the ID, which you can see here. Then select the author. Here, by the way, is where you could put in the tag IDs. This is where you choose the author. And then for the image, feature media ID. So that comes from the previous module here. And it's just media item ID, and you select that one. Cool. So once that's all done, let's give it a go now and see what happens. So I'm going to press save, and we're going to run it on this new article, which I've got here in my spreadsheet. So I've got this new article called HR Professionals Beware. 76% of executives say AI can replace basic roles. And this article is based off a report from HR Magazine, where it says 3/4 of executives use AI to focus on strategy. In other words, 3/4 of UK executives in HR say that they are using AI to automate basic stuff and they're doing more high-level stuff. Well, that's great, unless you're the person that does the basic stuff, because what that means is you've been automated. So that's what the article is about. I've done the word count. Here I'm going to type in my primary keywords. So let's say human resources. Secondary keywords, AI, automation, HR magazine for report. Okay, let's leave it like that. I've got the link to the report to give credibility. And then I used ChatGPT to do this, but I summarized the article, took out the key points and asked it to focus on how this article could apply to people worried about AI taking their jobs, because that's what I focus on at Automation Coach. So that's in my additional instructions. And now I'm going to come to make.com, and the first thing I'm going to do is save. And I'm just going to run this first module to make sure that it's pulling in that bottom article, which it is. You can see there. And now I'm going to press run. Okay, I left that running for a few minutes and it's now finished the article. And so if we go to our WordPress backend and refresh the page, we can see that the article has now saved as a draft. And if we click preview, here it is. That's the image that was generated, completely unique. I think that looks really nice. You can see here, HR, cool, futuristic graphics. If you remember in our sort of extra instructions, we asked it to start with this quote, so it's done that. According to a recent report by HR Magazine, and it's got the link to that important source to give credibility. And let's have a look to see whether it's put in some nice formatting. So you can see here pretty standard paragraphs to start off with. It keeps going with all the different sections. Here we've got subtitles, bullet points, more bullet points here. We've got a table here, the style of which would be dependent on your WordPress theme. So I can tidy that up and make it look nicer. More bullet points. We've got a quote here, according to Automation Coach and AI Advisor. There's the quote. And I think I might change that so that it links to my Twitter or LinkedIn. Conclusion, key insights, calls to action, opportunities, and it's put the author and it's categorized it correctly as HR. Look at that, guys. And that's a fully autonomous blog post system. And again, if you've enjoyed this tutorial and you want to get the blueprint, please come to my school community. And here you will find under Classroom the tutorials where you can get the blueprint, and then you just need to import it here.